Hello there. Welcome to the case wrap up, episode 6, Widower. It was another Kevin Mailer uh, centric episode, and it kind of goes through Kevin's past relationships he's had with four girls in particular, all of them younger, some of them a lot younger, and they each have something in common. They're all very young. They're gullible. They seem to be in love with Kevin. They seem to be easily manipulated, and it's listening to it, it breaks my heart to hear some of these stories of Kevin just treating these teenage girls like this, and breaking their arm or making their son eat up puke. It's absolutely disgusting. But it's but so it was episode 6, Widower. I'm joined by Harrison as always. How you doing, Harrison?
I'm doing good. Let's get into the episode. It was a pretty good one.
Yes, it was a short one. I was surprised. Only 38 minutes long, which was contrary to last week. It was
Hour
less
and a
than
half.
hour and a half long. So, but there was a lot packed into this episode. There was a lot. There was a lot of exposition being given, not by Kirk, but by just the interviews he was given, and these women who were just talking. So, the first girl that Kevin got pregnant, this was in the 80s. She was 15 while she got pregnant, which Kevin, I believe, was 20 or 21 at the time, which is still, like I said, different times. But to me, that's still like a red flag. If I see someone who's 21 and they're dating a 15-year-old, especially if they're getting them pregnant, that's just a red flag to me. But it sounds like when she was talking about the abuse she suffered, it was not only physical abuse, but I want to focus more on the mental aspect of it, about how he would apparently take razor blades to himself and say, "Hey, if you leave me, I'm going to kill myself." He would threaten like, "Hey, if it was a lot of, I'm going to hurt myself if you leave me," which is a form of an emotional abuse. And obviously, this girl being 15, she doesn't want her dead boyfriend on her conscience, the father of her children. So she stays with him for longer than she probably should have. And
it's the first we've heard of Kevin acting like this, but it is like
not surprising.
It's not surprising because he's been we've heard that he's so manipulative with trying to act like the good or like the tragic person, or the good person. So this is right in his wheelhouse.
Yes, he always tries to make it seem to be like his life is just one giant tragedy that happens. We'll get to that with Diane Cool later on, about how he kind of victimizes himself through all that. But it's so this girl, who was apparently best friends with Jennifer Faye, and Jennifer Faye was in the hospital room when she was giving birth, which is interesting because she never says if Kevin was in the hospital room while she was giving birth. So that's just because if he was, I know fathers are allowed to be in the in the room while the mothers are giving birth. But was he there? You think he would go there to support his girlfriend who was giving birth to his first child?
Kevin would Kevin do it? Probably not.
Probably not. But also the fact that Jennifer liked to party, Kevin liked to party. I have a feeling this girl liked to party. The fact that these two girls could be so close, and Kevin says he never even knew of Jennifer, is just absolute bullshit. It's just another tally in the Kevin is just flat out lying about everything to do with him not even knowing who Jennifer Faye was. There's just fact after fact after fact, whether it be the person who said they saw them doing cocaine together at the party the night of her disappearance. Now it's her one of her best friends in high school was his girlfriend at the time, of whom he gave multiple children to. So it's it just amazes me that Kevin just can't just come out and flat out just say, I know who Jennifer Faye was. Her story is tragic.
And I think this was the a good spot to put all that information. Right after the interview episode, this episode kind of acts like a rebuttal to everything
Yes.
he says. So that's just another rebuttal right there.
Yes. So but he was not only just emotionally abusive with this girl. I mean, I believe she said that he hit her with a headboard in her
While
back.
she was pregnant.
Yes, which is assault with a deadly weapon. So the fact that like he's willing to do that to a teenager who is pregnant, assault with a deadly weapon, it could possibly lead to, you could break. You're a 15-year-old girl. You're a strong dude. If you hit someone with a piece of wood across the back, you could potentially kill them. It just goes to show that I think that he has something to do, and he is willing to do a lot to try to make his case and for all these things.
And she also mentioned like if they were driving, he would hit her while she was driving if she looked at someone on the street.
Yeah, or if he even thought she looked, like if he saw someone, it was like, hey, don't look at her, and would hit her. Which is just psychopath 101.
That also lines up with like his Facebook posts where he always thinks girls are backstabbing him and getting with other guys and stuff.
Meanwhile, he seems to just be fucking away. I mean, he seems like he's been cheating on a lot of his girlfriends in the past. But it seems like it's a one-way street when it comes to that. If you even talk to a boy, there's no chance he's going to act on it. So what I did find interesting is that they not only talked to this girl of whom he got pregnant, he talked to his first son, of whom he told Kirk that he was in great contact with. He talks to him a lot, and this guy says that he was talking to him, and he says he hasn't talked to him, and he's only been in contact with him in 2019 when he was going down there to Walhalla or I believe it wasn't even Walhalla. He was just going down to South Carolina for his brother's military graduation. So he decided to get into contact. And, Kevin did the poor me. Oh, I've loved you. I think about you all the time. But it's just, there's no chance that's actually a thing. So.
I mean, I could see him getting emotional. I
could see him too.
Yeah.
But I don't see him actually believing it. Like, I think if you came up to him, 3 months later and said, "Oh, how's your son doing?" he wouldn't start crying about how proud he is or anything like that. He'd be like, "Oh no," it just sounds like he's just always just trying to play the victim. So, is there anything else you want to say about the first person? The first girl?
On the first person, I mean, it's just a sad situation.
Yeah.
That she was so like 15 years old. I mean, that's.
Yeah, and
just thinking of you, if you were involved with something like that at 15, it's terrible.
Well, it's like just I think about like when I was 15, and just to have if when you're 15, people who are like 20, 21 seem like they're full grown adults. Yeah. I mean the power difference there is just huge. So
you would be inclined to go along with
if they said something, I mean, you just go along. Well, you'd be like, hey, they're 20, they're 21. They know exactly what they're talking about. They've lived this. They're a full grown adult, which like you and me understand now that like 20 and 21, you're still growing, still things to learn about and everything like that. So she ended up having to get a restraining order. Oh, and another thing about this person, which is sad and telling, was that she didn't even file child support for the second child, because Kevin went out of his way so hard to try to not pay child support. If he would get a job and the government would start taking money out of his paycheck, he would just quit the job and go and do something else, which is just, I mean, you can't sit there and do that and then say, when you talk to your son 30 years later and say like, oh, I've always loved you. It's like, no, you haven't. You're only saying this because we're face to face right now. If we weren't face to face, this would not be a conversation that we're having.
Which is what his son kind of told him you ruined you ruined me,
Mm-hmm.
our relationship, but
Yeah,
like try to do something with your daughter.
yeah, and I'm not sure how. I mean, it seems like he
Yeah.
has a closer relationship with his current daughter, but
Mhm.
I can't imagine he's the best father. So the second girl was is the girl she's been brought up in previous episodes. He was the one who he said was pregnant with his child, and then Diana Natali put a spell on her, and she lost the baby due to that spell. So she refutes this. She didn't want to go on. She didn't want to have her voice heard or anything
Mhm.
like that. But she says that it has to do with a sickness, an illness that she had. I'm not entirely
Yeah.
sure what the real
A
reason
medical
is.
issue.
It is alluded to later on at the end of the episode when they're talking about um, their uh, their
The
cousins.
yeah, the cousins.
His cousins was that she saw him push her down a flight, 3 flights of stairs, and she says that's how. I'm going to assume that she was talking about this girl, and she said that's how
Mm-hmm.
she lost the baby. I mean, sudden trauma to the stomach can obviously cause serious,
Yeah.
you know, problems. But it, there's, I mean, obviously it's a tragedy, but he also left this girl right after. I mean, there was a huge age gap. There was still the
Yeah.
same. She was the same age, and he left her right after she had a miscarriage. Which, I mean, I'm not going to put myself in anyone's shoes here, but I can imagine it's heartbreaking, and you have no
Mm-hmm.
idea what it's going through, and just to be able to pack up and just move on to the next
Mm-hmm.
girl, or find a new girlfriend, just kind of speaks to Kevin's character
Yeah.
and how he likes to handle things.
Yeah.
It feels like he.
For Kevin, he who claims that he's had so many of these life-changing moments affect him negatively, and
Mhm.
just to walk out on a girl that just had something even worse. It's
Yeah,
just
I mean, she just went through. And I'm curious as to why. I could see there's a multitude of reasons why I guess she wouldn't want to be put on record or have her name out there.
Mhm.
But it is curious with the teaser at the end there, and and with Kevin's cousins talking about how she was pushed down flights of stairs. If there is still contact with this girl, if Kevin has possibly like threatened her over certain things, if she might know more about certain situations with Jennifer than she originally gave. So
Mhm.
that's uh that's the second girl, which
Mhm.
is obviously another, like each one of these. If you take a look at each one of these four girls, if one person did this to one of them, you'd go, okay, this person is not a good person. Um, it's just, the whole thing's just terrible. But the fact that it happened 4 different times is just unreal. So and this girl was only 14 too, so even younger than
Mhm.
the first girl he got pregnant, which is just disgusting. Yeah, I mean, you're a freshman in high school at best when you're 14.
Yeah.
It's just a tough look. So the third girl was Diane Cool, and
Mhm.
we know from previous episodes that he considers himself. This is another tragedy of Kevin of Boston, was that his wife died and from breast cancer when he was still with her, and her family was part of the mafia and wouldn't let him go to the funeral, and he has no contact
Mhm.
with their kid and everything like that. So, but hearing Diane's family talk about Kevin really, I don't believe a single thing that he said about. I think they had no relationship when she died.
Mhm.
I'm sure he heard about it, that she was dying, and he kind of, as he tends to do, he thinks, hey, how can I put myself into this situation?
Yeah.
You know,
He
um,
saw an opportunity to make himself look
yeah,
tragic
like a victim.
again. Yeah.
I'd like to ask, if I had a chance to ask Kevin. Um, he says all these things have gone wrong in his life. I'd like to ask him one thing he thinks has, gone right in his life. You know, he says like, "Oh, everyone's blaming me for Jennifer Faye. Everyone's blaming me for all these things. Oh, my unborn daughter was put a hex on." I just like to ask him, in his opinion, has anything ever taken a turn for the good in his life? Has he ever done something, or something has happened to him that helped him out? I just think it would be interesting just to see if he's even able to come up with something of that sort. So they, according to Diane Kuhl's son, of whom he remembers living with Kevin and everything like that, they were married, like, I want to say air quotes married, due to the fact that, but I'm sorry, not due to the fact, but we don't know if it was like technically married, if they were just kind of living together. And just
what he knows is that they were married.
Yes. While the rest of, you know, Diane's family says they're not sure any marriage ever took place, but they do know that they, you know, lived together and everything like that. And so we kind of get the story of this relationship through the son's eyes, and the son was only 6 when Kevin was living with them. So I think this is the saddest part of the entire episode. I know Kirk mentioned before the episode came out was that what goes on in this episode is unlike anything else. And I know that there's the stuff that Diane and Natalie did to people inside of her house. But this child says that he would constantly see his mother get beat up by Kevin Mailer. He was thrown across a room by Kevin. I mean, this is a 6-year-old child. If you have to throw a child across a room in order to do something, that's just not right. That's very, very illegal and very bad. And would make him eat food. And if the child refused to eat food and threw up on the food, would then be forced to then eat the throw up, which is just, it's sadistic. It's actual torture.
I mean, you can see that. I mean, I mentioned it a couple episodes ago, but the parallels between Kevin and Diana here.
Yes.
I mean, it's the same situation. It's Kevin has been calling her evil for what she did to Rena, when Kevin has done like very similar things to children.
Yes. I when I heard this story, my first thing is, you know, he's mentioned before, Diana Natalie's evil. She's a witch. The things she did to that girl in that basement. It's like, okay, well, you're doing very similar things to, you know, Diana would take her head and put it in, you know, her bathroom bucket if she wasn't eating all of her food or doing her chores. This guy would make a child, a 6-year-old, a kindergartner, eat his own vomit. So, I mean, that's kind of like, you can't take shots at someone for doing that if you're doing the exact same thing. So it's just like that part just absolutely there's no excuse for that. The fact that he did this on multiple occasions, and the fact that he remembers this, the kid. And what I found interesting too was that he says he remembers other things too, like being picked up from school, and he remembers being so thankful that he was getting picked up from school that day. Like, these are things that like children should just take for granted. I mean, he just has.
Or I thought he was. I thought he said he wasn't thankful because he would have to go see Kevin. Like, he would rather be in school.
Oh, I heard it. Maybe I heard it differently.
I don't know.
But I heard it that he was like, oh, at least that the son kind of has like this victim mentality where, well, Kevin does do this thing where he's like, he treats people so bad that whenever he treats them well, they're like, oh my goodness, look at this. He's doing this for me, when it should just be something taken for granted. And then the fact that she died and this kid had to be raised by his grandmother, and not have, you know, a father in his life is just it's just sad in and of itself. I mean, it's sad in the general, but then you look at like what Kevin is, and you're glad that this guy, I mean, he seems to be turned out okay. And I'm sure if Kevin was more involved in his life, he would not have been.
Yeah. And he also mentioned that he has a sister that
Yes.
Kevin reached out to when she turned 18. Kevin didn't have a relationship at all with her, but decided to reach out in 2010, was it?
Yep. And say how much he misses her, and he loves her, and he thinks about her every day. And these are things that's just, it's so obvious to just be like, that's not true, because you just look at, if you did, why didn't you reach out? In 1999, I know he says that his Diane's family had ties to the mafia, especially Alfredo. But that's just, I mean, you can hear it in the son's voice. Like when Kirk brings that up, it's almost like he's never heard it before. He's like, yeah, no, that's just not true. It just seems to be an easy cop out to be like, oh yeah, and this guy, she had a family member named Alfredo. Oh, he was in the mafia. I wasn't allowed to, talk to her or do anything or attend her funeral.
Yeah.
I'm just a sad, lonely widow who can't go around and do anything. So that was definitely, I think, I don't want to say, and it is to say that Diane was only 3 years younger than Kevin, but the fact that like she seemed like she was in a susceptible position. He got her pregnant multiple times, was abusive over her. He just likes having control over women, and when he no longer has control over them, or they go to family members, or they go live with someone else, he just moves on. He just kind of moves on, and then 20 years later, he'll send a high Facebook message talking about how much he loves them and misses them, and that just seems to be his MO.
In the episode, they kind of did that juxtaposition of reading a Facebook post of Kevin's, like how much he misses Diane.
Oh, his poem.
And,
yeah.
And then going straight to one of the family members saying he remembers seeing Kevin choke her out.
Yeah, choke her out like on top of a laundry machine.
Yeah.
And this isn't Diane's family members. This is one of Kevin's family members. A member of the Clarks, of whom Kirk says we hear more from them in episode 7. So I'm looking forward to that because I'm sure there's a lot more that, the son. I mean, the son, he's an unreliable narrator. I mean, this is coming from a 6-year-old kid. So he says he remembers all these fights and things. They could have been a whole lot worse than what he remembers them as. So I just found that to be just disturbing and everything to do with Diane Cool. But I really do think that Diane Cool, I'd say if he would rank the tragedies in his life, I think he would say being blamed for Jennifer's death is 1, and then Diane's battle with breast cancer and her dying 2, both of which I think have. The second one, I think he had no relationship with Diane at the time of her death.
Yeah.
And the Jennifer one is just so strange, just to try to play victim of a teenage girl who went missing and say that was the reason why your life turned sour. So
didn't Diane's son say it was like years after they weren't together that she passed away?
Yes, it was I believe it was 1995. And it sounds like she left around like 1992. She was remarried at the time, I believe.
And his whole thing was Diane and his mother were in the same hospital at the same time. So I don't know, like, was he visiting? I don't like.
He just doesn't seem to me like he would be a person who would visit hospitals. I think he would more just want to tell people, oh, look at me, I'm so sad. The mother of my children is in the hospital along with my mom. It's just, he just likes to play sad songs for himself. That just seems to be his MO. And I do think that Diane's death really has a lot to do with it. But it's so that was the fourth girl that had a big influence on Kevin Mailer's life. The third girl. The fourth girl, he was around 29 when they started dating. She was 13 years younger. She was 16 years old. And it sounds like to me like she was just trying to, like, she was just immature. She really had no idea. I mean, you listen to her and she's talking about how she didn't know Kevin was on drugs. She didn't think all these things. She believed him whenever he would say anything. And that's just something you do when you're 16. You believe 29-year-olds, which is why it's so gross and disgusting that this was a sexual relationship. Kirk brings up the fact that he thinks that, this could have been a possible second life for Kevin. He could have been living an entirely another life with another woman at this time. And this girl had no idea. And she just has terrible stories as well. Her story about how she was trying to save him from being like on drugs and everything like that.
Yeah.
And
Well,
she took
I think where she with the broken arm story.
Yep.
Yeah, I think she was saying they were on the road somewhere.
Yep.
And she wasn't aware that Kevin had drugs in his car. So she was kind of toying with, like, she had his keys and was toying with him. And it, like, Kevin had to, he thought he had to break her arm to get away from the police. Yeah.
Which is just insane. To snap a 16-year-old, a teenage girl's arm is just horrific. I mean, that takes force. That's not something you do accidentally. And it really sounds like, she was just in love with him, and that there was nothing he could really do. And he knew that, because he came back, after he snapped her arm. I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I had to do it. You made me do it." Like, he's always the victim. Even when he takes someone's arm and snaps it, it's still not his fault. I don't think he's. Another question.
Can't take the blame.
Another question I think would be interesting to ask him would be: is there anything in your life that went wrong and it's your fault? Like, is there something you did that would be, that led to bad things happening to you? Was it always someone else's fault? It's never the fact that he had a shit ton of drugs in his truck. No, it's the fact that he wasn't able to get the keys from her. So, what else would he have to do? He had to snap her arm in half and send her to the hospital. So it's just absolutely disgusting. These four cases are fucked when you just take a look at them, and it really shows. I like what you said earlier about how last episode was the interview, and this kind of just contradicts everything. If you re-listen to episode 5, the interview, it's just complete bullshit. You just listen to the entire thing and you go, "Oh, he's just not telling the truth about everything." He's no wonder he's fallen asleep during these polygraph tests, is because the questions Kirk was going to ask him has to do with, the first girl you ever got pregnant was best friends with Jennifer Faye. Did you know this? He's going to fail that easily. He's going to fail everything. But this is the second time Jennifer's name got brought up in this episode. She was talking to him, and she would say things like, they said years later, this relationship lasted a while, and years later, they talked about Jennifer, and even she said, like, he just acted like he did it. He would say he never did it, and she even says, like, she believes him, but she was like, you need to come clean and get all this information out there, because the way you're acting and the way it seems, it looks like you killed this. You had some involvement in killing this girl,
which is something we were saying a couple episodes ago, like him reaching out to the families of each of these girls, just like checking how they're doing, and just like kind of, like that makes you seem like you're acting like a guilty person.
Yeah, and then Kirk says he just randomly had people start reaching out to Kirk and saying, like, "Oh, Kevin's a great guy, by the way. Oh, you won't believe this. He beat up my boyfriend who was really, hurting me, and he's this great guy." He just seems to have a strong influence over young immature girls, and it's not their fault, obviously. It's this monster's fault, and the thing is that he's still doing this. He's still getting away with things. People are still dying because of him. When you look at the Faith case and the Kevin case. Yeah, I'm sorry, the April case and the Kevin case. These have taken places like decades apart. So what's to say that this is not going to continue happening? I know Kirk said at the beginning of the episode, he defines statutory rape, and he says that he doesn't think that he would be brought on charges for statutory rape from something that happened, 30, 35 years ago. My thing is that I feel like he just needs to be brought on charges for something, just for something. Just get him in court and put him away for something, because people are still going to continue dying, and people are going to continue being hurt as long as he's out on the street. He doesn't learn his lesson. I mean, obviously you can't learn a lesson. You can't just learn a lesson when you are responsible for the disappearance of a girl or the disappearance of a these different people. But he's continuing to do the same thing. It's always just poor Kevin. So
and he's not just out and on the street. He's active once again on social media. So he can start right back up where he left. Yeah.
So it's just, I feel like he's just going to continue doing this until he gets brought. It doesn't matter if, in my opinion, I understand why these family members want him to be brought to justice for their specific case, want him to be convicted of this. My main thing is it doesn't matter what he gets convicted of, in my opinion. If you can get him, if the only thing you have evidence against him is statutory rape from the 1980s, I think that the police should try to get him, just as a community, just to try to make the community safer. Just get him in jail, figure out everything else, because he's just a danger on the street, and I'm just not a fan of people, of him just being out and about. And so I think they should but that's the thing, he has been arrested before for possession of handguns, but he keeps getting out, which I know Kirk and Steve have said multiple times before that they are upset, or not upset, but it's crazy when you look at the criminal justice system and the things that people get out for over and over again. And that if he was put away for a longer time for some of these certain acts, these things wouldn't have happened. So I know he's out on bail now, but I'm just hoping that he just goes away for a long time, and then we're able to figure out what happened to Jennifer, what happened to Faith, what happened to April, what happened to Kevin in regards to him. Because next year it's going to be Jennifer, Faith, April, Kevin, and Tammy, or something like that. Just another person. So I just
there have been some other girls that Kirk mentioned on the just on some of the behind the case episodes. So there are other ones that haven't been mentioned on the actual podcast, but those names are out there already.
Yeah. So it's scary. It's just scary to think that this man is still out there, and he just needs to be brought to justice. For many things, but just get him in on one thing at a time. So, anything else you have to say, Harrison?
No.
About today's episode?
I think if you want to look ahead, I have no idea where this is going next.
Neither do I. I know they said they're going to be learning about Kevin's family more and more about Kevin's cousins in this episode, but I truly have no idea where this is going to keep going. So
2 episodes left.
2 episodes left. That's right. We got next one drops on Monday, and then by the time, I know Kirk has said maybe they'll do an epilogue, something in the future where a couple months down the line he'll kind of talk about, okay, well, this is the kind of the final things, kind of where are they now. I could definitely see that happening. So,
and of course, if something develops, if there's an arrest made, they're gonna come back. Yeah.
So thank you, Harrison. Thank you to everyone who is listening. Be sure to, if you know anything about the disappearance of any of these girls, the Case Podcast at barstoolsports.com. Thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you next week.